Yes guys, welcome back to the Fantasy Football Fix live stream. My name is FPL Nacho and in this video we're going to be looking at Game Week 4 in isolation. It is a Saturday morning deadline for those in the UK, so we still have plenty of time to consider our transfers. We don't have to panic tonight with some of those Friday deadlines that we all dread when we are getting home from work thinking, have we got our transfers done? It is great to be here right now on a Friday where we can really deep dive into some of those hot topics that we have going into Game Week 4. So, as a reminder, guys, if you are new around here, make sure you do hit that subscribe button. And if you enjoy the stream, make sure you do drop a like. We always try and get 50 likes on this live stream. So if you can get that once again, that'll be massively appreciated. I can see some of the usual people in the chat. I can see Samuel Lewis in the chat. Hope you're doing well, buddy. Cheekster, good evening, FPL Nacho. Hope you're doing well, mate. Rio, with an early question through the door. And again, guys, through this live stream, make sure you are dropping any questions you have going into Game Week 4. I will try and answer them throughout the stream as we go along. And just a quick recap on this live stream. We're going to be looking at my team going into Game Week 4. We're going to be looking at a Game Week 4 wildcard. I know a lot of you out there are considering pulling the trigger. I'm going to show you what my kind of wildcard team would look like going into this weekend. Then we'll be looking at the predicted points for Game Week 4 in isolation. I think that's going to be really important if you are planning some of your transfers to see which players are predicted to do the best this weekend. Then we're also going to be looking at captaincy for Game Week 4 because like the game weeks we've had previously, we've got loads of options available to us and getting the right one is going to be critical to having a good game week. So again, guys, if you are enjoying it, make sure you do drop a like on the live stream. So Rio already has put in a question saying, will it be worth a -8, which I get straight away, a points hit is very difficult to recoup in one single game week in isolation, to transfer in Martinelli, Perisic and Rodrigo for Saka, Patterson and Neto. Okay, so I like the move of Patterson and Neto. Saka feels like not the right time to do it with this game week at home to Fulham. However, the upgrades that you're making in the rest of your team with Perisic and Rodrigo, yes, naturally they are upgrades to your team. I think the way I'd view it is this. I hate the -8, it's worth mentioning, just because I think points are so difficult to get in FPL that when you actually just give them away, it's almost like a crime in FPL. However, in a -4 or a -8, if you are viewing it as a long-term move, which when you are mentioning these transfers here, I do view them as a long-term move, then I don't mind it. But I would question whether the -8 is worthwhile right now. Or can you just maybe make the Saka to Martinelli move, for example, if you really don't like the position that Saka is putting you in as we speak. Tez, I hope you're doing well, mate. Unknown Shadow. Who should I take out from James, Trent, Zinchenko, Cancelo to get Cucurella in? I wouldn't make any of those transfers, to be honest with you. I think all of those are fantastic options this game week. I think all of those start, and I think all of them have potential to get clean sheets this week. So based on that, I would not bring in Cucurella. I would hold off on that transfer going into Game Week 4. Cheekster, hope you're doing well, mate. Amir saying, if I have to choose a starter between Trippier and Rodrigo for Game Week 5, who will it be? Well, I think based on the form that he's in right now, I think Rodrigo probably would be the option to go for. Now, Trippier and Newcastle have been looking very good so far this season, but I think you always back the attacker. Rodrigo playing as a number 9 in this Leeds team who looked fantastic against Chelsea. Have a tricky game against Brighton is worth noting. Brighton have been really one of the best teams in the league so far. 4th best for expected goals conceded as well, it's worth mentioning. So it's not going to be an easy day at the office for Leeds. But I think in that debate there, I think you just lean towards Rodrigo. Even if he is exceeding his underlying stats, I think there's still excellent value there for him. And let's skip saying, who to replace Walker with, Trippier, Cucurella or Zinchenko? Well, firstly, I don't think Walker out is necessarily the right move right now. I still think he offers good value at 5.1 million or whatever he's priced at. Of the players that you're discussing right now, I think you need to ask yourself, do you have Chelsea coverage or Arsenal coverage? If you have neither, I think the preference for me would be to get Zinchenko in the door. I think it offers great value in that Arsenal defence. If you already have Reece James, I think Cucurella as a double up isn't necessarily the right move to go for. I think while Kante is out, I don't really back the Chelsea defence as we speak. And Trippier I really do like as an option, but of course, they do have a tricky game week the following week. So of the bunch, I think first and foremost, do you have Arsenal coverage? Do you have Chelsea coverage? If one of those is a no, you go for that option as the alternative. Otherwise, I like Trippier. He is a good option going forward. What I'm basically saying is I don't like the double up on Chelsea right now as we speak. And Ty's saying, Gross or Aronson, bro? Okay, so Aaronson is someone that has massively come onto my radar right now. And I think based on the fixtures going forward, I really do think that he is going to be an option worth mentioning. With that goal, it has skewed his expected goals a little bit, because who scores goals on the line? He basically had an incredibly high XG, which has skewed it for him. I think it's worth mentioning that the Leeds investment have to be considered no matter what. Of the two, though, I probably would just go for Gross. I still think he's offering good value right now in the game, and Brighton's fixtures are good as well, it's worth noting. So keep the questions coming, guys. As I said, we're going to be looking at my team next. I want to cover that a little bit of detail, because like a lot of people right now, quite a quiet game week, I would say. Not many people are wanting to make moves, and I think with the midweek fixture that we do have, if you can roll your free transfer, I think it puts you in a very powerful position, because it is the first time this season where we have a midweek game. So we basically are going to have 3 games in a week, which for some players questions their game time. So it is worth noting that if you have an opportunity to roll the free transfer, this might be the best possible game week to do so, because it's going to give you flexibility in game week 5. If, for example, Haaland gets announced by Pep that he's not going to be playing in game week 5, and you decide you want to go Harry Kane, you've got that flexibility with those 2 free transfers. So guys, without further ado, let's have a look at my game week 4 team ahead of the weekend. Okay guys, so here is how my team is looking at going into the weekend. You can see 67 predicted points for the team, which I am absolutely delighted with. If it gets anywhere near that, that will be a fantastic game week. Now, like a lot of you out there, you're probably looking at your teams going into this weekend thinking, I am in an excellent position right now. And it's because of the template having so many premium players from premium teams and all these fantastic home games. So you're probably sitting there with triple Liverpool, where they have a fantastic fixture at home to Bournemouth, which is going to be very difficult for you to sell any of your Liverpool assets. Crystal Palace at home for Man City. Yes, it is a tricky fixture based on the performances Palace have put in so far this season, but I still think it is a good fixture for Man City. And then, of course, that excellent fixture at home for Arsenal. I imagine a lot of you are sat there with triple Arsenal right now. Very difficult to move away from any of your Arsenal assets right now. And then, of course, a lot of managers out there might have a sprinkling of the likes of Gross, who has a great home fixture. So right now, teams are looking fantastic. And I do think, as I mentioned, I will reiterate, if you can roll your free transfer to have 2 free transfers going into the midweek fixtures, I think that is a fantastic position to put yourselves in, because it's going to give you flexibility. Now, let's paint a picture right now with my team as we speak. As I mentioned, if Haaland gets a little bit of confirmation that he's going to be benched for game week 5, then we can put question marks whether Harry Kane is the route to go for. And I'm not panicking with just 1 free transfer in the bank. I know I've got 2. It's a move that I can make and roll the other one if I want to, and then jump back to him if it is a strategy that I want, because having 2 free transfers just gives you those avenues that you can have different conversations with your team strategy. So, guys, it's going to be a very quick one for me on my team, because there's very little to talk about right now. Rolling my free transfer is almost guaranteed. I think it's definitely going to give me the flexibility going forward. I've touched on the game week 5. I think having 2 free transfers is going to be very important if we want to manage the potential rotation for teams. And we have all home fixtures, which is fantastic. Not much of a bench in deliberation right now. Ward obviously isn't going to be coming in ahead of Ramsdale. Andreas Pereira, while he's a fantastic FPL option, isn't going to be a pick right now in this game week because of his tricky away fixture against Arsenal, and the same goes for Nico Williams with his home fixture against Spurs. So let me know in your chat, guys, what are your current deliberations for game week 4 in your team? I'm going to quickly answer some more questions, and then we will move on to my potential game week 4 wildcard team if I was to wildcard. So Emmanuel's saying, James and Perisic, who is a better pick? So man, it's a really good question there, because I think if Reece James was guaranteed to play right wing back in that Chelsea system, I think Reece James wins this debate every single time. But with the suspension to Koulibaly, I think there is a bit of weakness right now in the Chelsea defence, and I think Tuchel likes to opt for Reece James playing as a right-sided centre-back. And we need to remember they are playing against the likes of Harvey Barnes and Jamie Vardy, who do like to occupy that left flank for Leicester. So naturally, there might be a temptation for him to start Reece James as a right-sided centre-back this week to combat the pace that those two offer. So it's worth noting that right now. But of the two, I still do favour Reece James. The Chelsea fixtures are good, and I think Perisic is going to be prone to rotation from time to time. I'll be very surprised if he starts 3 of the next fixtures, because they play Saturday, midweek, and then the following weekend. Then they have Champions League to compete with as well. So I think game time is going to be given to Ryan Sessegnon, whether he starts or whether he gets rotated on the 60-minute mark. So Perisic is a brilliant option, but I still would favour James of the two there. SK saying, I have Diaz and Cancelo. Do I do Patterson to Trippier for free? Diaz and El Neni to Saliba and Diaz, or Trippier and Tony? So I like the Patterson Trippier move if you want to go there, but you're deliberating other moves as well. I prefer the move of you doing Diaz and El Neni to Trippier and Tony. I do like those moves there for a -4. Do you have a price prediction for Isaac? Someone's saying that he's been announced at 7 million. I don't actually know the confirmation there, but if that is the case, that is definitely an option for us to be considering in FPL. Now, I would not recommend any managers jumping in on Newcastle assets as we speak. We need to know whether Isaac's actually going to get guaranteed game time or not, because of course Callum Wilson has been ruled out for potentially 3 matches. Will Eddie Howe just jump Isaac into the Newcastle team? Still to be unclear right now. So I think because of that, enough of a reason for us not to be jumping in on Isaac. And looking at the fixtures coming up for Newcastle, they are a little tricky as well. Away to Wolves, who, while they're not performing necessarily the best, defensively they're still a decent side. Then they have Liverpool, then Crystal Palace, then West Ham, and then Bournemouth. So I think we can look at the next 4 fixtures as an opportunity to just have a watching brief on Callum Wilson and on Isaac. And then when the fixtures do turn for Newcastle around game week 8, that might be an opportunity to maybe wildcard into some of those players who offer excellent value with good fixtures as well going forward. And Nick Knack saying, debatable whether it's worth having any Chelsea players right now. And I think the debate is worthwhile. I think if you have James, you stick though. I think that's my deliberation right now and kind of my thought process. Harry Kane and Haaland, who outscore each other, who is better and who is more nailed? Well, I think based on the more nailed conversation, I think Harry Kane wins that debate. The guy is just an absolute beast when it comes to FPL minutes. I think Harry Kane is absolutely the one to go for there if you just want to have a player that plays week in, week out. Not to say that he won't come off maybe after 70, 75 minutes of the game is secure, but yes, I think Harry Kane is the one for nailed. But based on our predicted points, Haaland is the one to go for based on predicted points. Over the next 5 game weeks, it's worth noting, Haaland is predicted to score 29.9 points, Kane 25.4. So Haaland's underlying stats are still looking fantastic, and there's been plenty of opportunities for him to have a bigger score than he has so far this season. So guys, I'm conscious here that the team that I'm showing you is my team going into game week 4, and as I mentioned, I have no plans to make any transfers. Plans going forward for the future, I view Kyle Walker as a bit of a dead asset right now. Yes, he is a double up in the Man City defence, which I think could prove value, but he offers so little going forward that his avenues to points just aren't really there. So he could be a potential transfer in game week 5 if I'm fed up of him and he doesn't offer much value. Also, Gross. I feel like that position right now is very much a case where I could go up into somebody at better range, or I could go all the way down to someone like Reed at Fulham and invest the funds elsewhere. So that one is a watching brief right now. I think very much a case until between now and when I wildcard, I'm more than happy just to float around with Gross to see what direction I go in. I think if a player pops off, we can move into him, because when I look at my team right now, I don't really personally panic on the performances of premium players over 1 game week. So a lot of you might be sitting there right now thinking, Cancelo 0 points, Trent hardly got any, James, Walker, all these premium players done poor in game week 3. So a lot of managers I know, and I've seen the amount of transfers out for some of these players, they've moved away, they're done. I very much view these players as almost season keepers. So because of that process that I have in my mindset, I view almost my back 4, Salah, Martinelli, Jesus, Haaland, as transfers I'm not going to be making. So I kind of view the team right now as a few positions that I can rotate, take chances elsewhere on lowly owned players to maybe pick up some points as my little punts here and there each game week. Last game week was Gross. I'm going to keep him for this week. In game week 5, another one might emerge, and I think to myself, the template is strong. I'm happy to use my 2 free transfers to maybe bounce from Gross to Rodrigo, for example, and maybe go Walker to Perisic and give myself a bit of a high risk, high reward asset. So that's the strategy I'm currently going for right now. And I think it's a strategy that a lot of managers are finding themselves naturally doing because they don't want to move away from the premium players available to them. So as I said, guys, let me move on to a potential wildcard team if I was to wildcard in game week 4. Okay, guys, so this is how the team would look if I was to potentially wildcard in game week 4. So what are the changes right now? Well, I've come down from Ramsdale to a 4.5 million goalkeeper in Sanchez. Brighton in general have been fantastic defensively. They're 4th best for expected goals conceded. And there's a big deliberation right now between which goalkeeper to go for, Sanchez or Brentford. And looking at the projected points for the two goalkeepers between game weeks 4 and game weeks 8, so the next 5 game weeks, Sanchez is predicted to score 21.5 points and Raya is predicted to score 19 points. So there really isn't much in it right now. So based on that, I like to look back on the performances of the rest of the team, and Brighton are the ones that I'm a bit more confident on from a defensive perspective. So based on that, Sanchez would be my 4.5 million goalkeeper, but there's absolutely no debate that Raya is still a fantastic FPL option at the same price point. Now you can see here, Cancelo, Trent, James have made the cut if I was to wildcard. I still think they're fantastic options and I wouldn't be looking to move away from them anytime soon. But the one that I had to throw in there is going to be Spurs' Perisic. Now, as I mentioned, a lot of managers right now are getting a little bit bored because fantasy is seeming a bit too easy and template, and players in the team feel like they can't move away from them because of their ownership numbers. I feel like Perisic is a perfect example of a player that is fantastic FPL value and also has that crazy FPL ceiling where he could rack up a monstrous haul because he's on set pieces, so attacking, and a bit of a bonus point magnet because of his chance creation. So Perisic, I think, is worth the punt. Now, of course, when you go for punts, you just need to be aware that there is going to be times where he does get rotated. It's very similar to if you were to go for a Man City midfielder. You accept that as part and parcel with the player that they're going to get rotated. But I think Perisic is worth the risk right now. And it's worth mentioning because of our algorithm and the predicted points, expected minutes are a big factor towards that. So Perisic on our predicted points isn't necessarily up there right now, but if we were to adjust the expected minutes and anticipate maybe 80 minutes per game, he would be right up there alongside these other defenders as a value defender. Now, in terms of the midfield, gone for a 3 midfielder, Salah, Rodrigo and Martinelli. I think Salah and Martinelli can't just pick ourselves right now. I know a few people are considering Kevin De Bruyne. I think he's a fantastic option, but I'm still in the camp of Mo Salah, in particular for that fantastic home fixture against Bournemouth. But Rodrigo is the interesting one for me. Now, I've looked at the midfielder performances of 6.5 million midfielders and below. And over the opening 3 game weeks, this is kind of like the top 5 expected FPL points. First is Rodrigo on 24.11 points. Second is Pascal Gross on 20.71. Third is Jack Harrison of Leeds on 18.21. Surprisingly, fourth is Martinelli on 16.91. And fourth is, quite surprising again, Marcus Rashford at 16.69. So Rodrigo, from an underlying perspective, is actually delivering, which is excellent to see. Personally, I thought that he was going to be one of those sort of characters who had huge output and the underlying stats really couldn't back it up. But right now, such a small sample size, but that's all we can kind of go off right now. I think Rodrigo is a good option at 6.4 million. And what I do like about him as well, spending that little bit more money in that area means that once inevitably he does dry up and he starts to become a bit of a seller's market, we can come down to most of the options available to us. You're kind of buying a player that stock is rising each and every game week right now. And the front 3, Jesus, Haaland, Tony. I've added Tony into the equation mainly because of a bit of the talisman theory at Brentford and the underlying stats kind of complemented with the projected points going forward. Tony is projected to score 23.6 points between now and game week 8. Which is the 4th best of all forwards. And the only 3 that have beaten him is Kane, Haaland and Gabriel Jesus, which is absolutely no surprise there. But I would argue, based on a value perspective, apart from Gabriel Jesus, Tony is one of the best value forwards in the game. You have to remember that he's on set pieces, on penalties, and he's a talisman in this Brentford team. And while the kind of big elite teams are going to have Champions League football to compete with, Tony and Brentford do not have that worry at all. And you know confidently that over the next 5 game weeks, as long as he stays fit, Tony plays pretty much every minute for Brentford, which I think is hugely underrated, because I would throw that question mark on the likes of Haaland, on the likes of Martinelli, for example. So I think that's really essential right now. And looking at the data, a lot of managers are moving away from the big at the back formations to a 3 up front formation. And that is very much the strategy that I've gone for in this wildcard team here. So let me know your thoughts in the comments, guys, on this wildcard team. I'm conscious I've dipped out of the comments, so I'm going to be dropping in right now, have a little discussion on what you guys are feeling going into game week 4. So, who have we got here? Pope say, game week 3, I bought in Cucurella, I have James too, but now tempted to do Cucurella's Perisic for game week 4. Is that a bit knee-jerk? I wouldn't necessarily do that myself. We don't know the status on Maddison right now, but he is a bit of an injury risk. I think it's a bit of a sideways move because I'm not anticipating Perisic to start both games. So I think Cucurella probably is the best to hold and just roll that free transfer going into game week 4. Chris is saying, thoughts on Isaac? I think he could be a fantastic option, but he's definitely a wait and see right now. Newcastle's fixtures coming up over the next 4 are tricky. I think that's a brilliant opportunity to see how he integrates into that Newcastle team. Late to the party, is this pre-wildcard or post? I haven't activated my wildcard. The team that you saw previously was my current team with no wildcard activated. Do you have any idea on Lucas Paqueta's price too if he signs for West Ham? No, we have no information on that right now. Deal still hasn't been confirmed. I know that has been a bid accepted. Very interesting asset that could emerge into the game, but right now, no idea on that one there. SK Chisla leading towards that move to a Tony Trippier 90 min men. Yeah, I think that is a solid move. I think, as I mentioned, when we get European football, which is going to be introduced, I believe, in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be seeing risks to these premium assets, in particular the likes of Haaland and even the likes of Perisic. And that's why I think these great value assets like Trippier, like Tony, as we've mentioned, who only have to worry about the league, could be fantastic investments over the coming game weeks. And Nicola Repic saying, what do you think? Walker and Trent out from Robertson and Perisic in. For this game week in isolation, I personally wouldn't do that. I think it's a little bit too sideways move. I would stick with the 2 that you have got. And Ashrez is saying, I wildcard, I had Trent, Robertson and lots of issues. 0.1. So pulled the trigger. I hope that works out for you, Ash. And the storyteller Nepal saying, same as FPL mate, wildcard to be team. Not too sure what that means. Maybe it's similar to FPL mates. I don't watch FPL mate, but I imagine this is quite a common wildcard team because of the emergence of Rodrigo and Tony. But yeah, I don't watch FPL mate. Some of them might have to check out. Cheekster, is it time to move away from big at the back for 4 premium defenders and invest in midfield instead? Okay, so I do not think that big at the back is dead by any means. We've seen this in previous seasons that when defenders underperform, I think it's natural for managers to think to themselves, well, if defenders aren't getting clean sheets, then we're kind of relying on attacking returns. And how often do they get attacking returns? So a lot of managers do jump ship very quickly on premium defenders because it's kind of an easy cash cow to get rid of to invest elsewhere in your team. So based on that, I think it's very much on the rest of your team. I personally think that the big at the back formation and strategy will come good. It absolutely will do. The likes of Man City, likes of Liverpool, they average like 50% clean sheets a season. The average will return to the mean eventually. So I don't think it's desperate moves. But however, it is worth noting that the forwards in the game are starting to emerge. So the likes of Ivan Toney. So if you have 5 premium defenders, then I think a good strategy might be to sell one of those down to a 4 million and invest them funds into a forward maybe to upgrade to the likes of Tony, who is my number 1 pick of a value forward. Amine saying, Kane or Haaland, guys? Well, based on the predicted points, Haaland is still the one to go for. However, that isn't taking into account potential rotation due to the Champions League. So if you are worried about potential rotation for the Champions League, then selling Haaland to Kane might be a viable move. Something I'm not considering this game week because I think Haaland starts against Crystal Palace, and therefore I think it's a fantastic option this game week. And Emmanuel saying, is Jack Harrison a good pick? I think Jack Harrison is a very good pick. Now, looking at Jack Harrison in isolation, I'm just going to bring him up on my screen. Unfortunately, you guys won't be able to see this, but I just want to check out his underlying stats that I can share with you guys. Expected goals is 0.62. And expected assists is 1. Now, he's had 24 points over 3 game weeks. And he's had an expected FPL points. So kind of it says it on the tin, what we expect his FPL points to be, 18.21. So he's tracking along quite nicely. He is overperforming, but not to a discrepancy that I would say to you guys, he is not going to be able to sustain this. My one worry is going to be the shot volume. He's only had 2 shots, so I'm not expecting him to be in and amongst the goals necessarily. So Jack Harrison is a viable option. However, when we compare him to someone like Rodrigo, we compare him to this: 13 shots, 6 of those on target, a 1.89 XG and a 0.85 expected assists. He's had 35 points and an expected FPL points of 24.11. While Patrick Bamford remains injured, I think Rodrigo is still the best option to go for. Now, that's not to say when Patrick Bamford returns that Rodrigo is still an excellent option, because I think then there's rotation we need to consider. If you have the money available, I would go Rodrigo, though it is worth noting. I think the underlying stats do back it there over the data sample that we do have. And Nick Nat saying is, Nick Nat makes a good point. Rodrigo, is he a flash in the pan or can he keep it going? That's the question. Absolutely, these sorts of players are going to have their purple patches. We've seen it all the time. They have spells where they're fantastic and then they disappear off the planet and then they pop up again. The big thing is jumping in while the iron is hot. And right now, Rodrigo is that sort of player. So I do not knock anybody going to him right now. And Mohammed saying, who should I play between James, Rodrigo and Gross? Well, based on that, I personally don't like benching premium players. In particular, someone like Reece James. Because although I think he will play as right-sided centre-back, there isn't necessarily a world where I don't foresee him playing right wing-back with Azpilicueta right-sided centre-back. Then you have a phenomenal option at 6 million against a Leicester team who are just conceding goals for fun. So based on that, I would go for Reece James personally. But of course, I would try and get at least 2 of those into a team if you can. Nick Nat said, how accurate are these predicted points usually? Well, we base this based on underlying stats so far this season, based on expected minutes. Now, of course, we can't guarantee 100% accuracy, but our algorithm has consistently delivered, and yeah, we are confident on our predicted points. But of course, they are predicted points. So much can happen, so much uncertainty in FPL. That's why when I tell you the predicted points over the next 5 game weeks, I feel a lot more confident than telling you just 1 game week in isolation, because so much can happen in 1 game week. We could have, for example, a predicted points of Cancelo getting 6, which is basically appearance and clean sheet. Man City could dominate, and in the last second, Walker kicks the ball into his own net for an own goal. Would you view that as poor predicted points? I wouldn't, but it will then, the outcome will be different, if you know what I mean there. SK, only issue with Tony is if they play a 3-5-2 and Bomo becomes the runner in behind. Yeah, SK has a fantastic point there. Tony is going to be a little bit dependent on the formation that they play. Now, with Thomas Frank right now, he has shown that he is the sort of manager that can operate as a back 3, but then easily be fluid into a back 4 if, for example, they're chasing a game. With the 4-3-3 formation that they play, I really do like Tony because he is the focal point in that team. He isn't necessarily being the one coming into the midfield to be the creative force that, for example, Eriksen was last season. But I still think it isn't enough of a reason for us not to invest in Tony. I still think he is a fantastic pick going forward. So guys, I'm just going to quickly jump over to the next screen. This is my current wildcard team. Of course, make sure you rewind the video and check it out once I skip by if you want to check it out again. But let's have a look at the predicted points for game week 4 in isolation. So guys, as I mentioned, these are the predicted points for game week 4 in isolation here. So again, these are based on our algorithm on fantasyfootballfix.com. Make sure you do check it out. It is one of our best tools available for members. So looking at the goalkeepers right now, as I mentioned every single game week, it is always going to be the premium goalkeepers on here. So it isn't much to read in, to be honest with you. Ramsdale, Alisson, Ederson, Sarr, Raya. Interestingly, Ramsdale top of the tree on 4.9 alongside Alisson. Ramsdale has been a fantastic option, and again, I think he is an absolute hold until you potentially wildcard in game week 8. Now, with the defenders, this is where the kind of contradiction comes in, because a lot of the FPL community right now are deciding to move away from Robertson. They're viewing him as a cash cow. Robertson down to someone like Perisic to then invest the funds elsewhere to maybe upgrade a forward or to upgrade a midfielder. However, looking at our predicted points for game week 4, you can see he is the second highest defender on 5.8 predicted points. So based on that, logically, based on that, it isn't necessarily a transfer that you should be making. But of course, there are always caveats. There's a little bit of conversation about potentially Tsimikas getting some minutes against Bournemouth. No concrete evidence on that whatsoever, so take it with a pinch of salt if you are a Robertson owner. But of course, I think with the discussion on Robertson, I think it all comes down to team dependency. If you have a squad right now which you are not happy with, but you don't want a wild card, I view Robertson as an opportunity for you maybe to come down to a Perisic, then invest the funds elsewhere. But if you are selling Robertson because you are kind of completely lost confidence in the Liverpool defence, I would probably question that one with the Bournemouth game that they do have. I think Bournemouth, based on the eye test, haven't been the best team in the league so far, and I think it is a fantastic opportunity for Liverpool to bounce back against them at home in front of the crowd. So based on that, I think Robertson is a hold, but I understand if managers want to sell to free up funds to invest elsewhere in their team. Now, the interesting one, of course, midfielders and forwards, and it kind of ties in with the captaincy, which we'll cover in the next slide. Salah, 8.5 predicted points, is by far and away our highest player for Game Week 4. And based on that alone, he is going to be our number one Game Week 4 captain, and he is going to be my captain for Game Week 4. Now, of course, Salah and Liverpool in general haven't been that outstanding, and it's very difficult for me to sit here and say Salah and Liverpool are the team that they were over the last few years. With a midfield behind him of Milner, Henderson, and bloody, who is it, Harvey Elliott or Keita, I don't get the confidence there that the creation is going to be at the level it is. And if the likes of Trent and Robertson are underperforming like some people believe, then naturally the Salah might not get in amongst it. But guys, this is Mo Salah on penalties, one of the best FPL options to ever grace the game. Salah is a fantastic option this game week, and I really do think it'll be tough to go for anyone else than Mo Salah. But the options are there. Kevin De Bruyne on 6.9, apologies, 6.7. Diaz on 6.2, Son on 5.9, Martinelli on 5.1. All fantastic options. And with the forwards, you can see it on screen now. I won't necessarily read them out, but Haaland, top of the tree, on a 6.6. If you had to ask me right now, I would anticipate Haaland to start against Crystal Palace. Played about 30 minutes in that weird Barcelona friendly that they had. I would anticipate Haaland to start in that game, in particular with Alvarez playing the predominant of the minutes in that friendly. So let me know your thoughts in the comments, guys. Are there any players not on these predicted points here that you maybe are captaining, maybe? Or is there some players on here that you're going to be bringing in who don't belong on this list? Let me know. Interestingly, some popular players like Rodrigo, for example, aren't on this list here for Game Week 4 in isolation. Grey Williams saying, one transfer and no cash in the bank. I have got the same team apart from Neto and Robertson. Thoughts? I would probably royal free transfer that and just hope that Robertson and Neto get those returns that they could get. So I say, should I sell Foden to get a Rodrigo or Tony? I think Foden is a solid hold this game week with their Crystal Palace fixture at home. The only reason I would downgrade Foden is you're investing the funds elsewhere in your team. De Silva or Gross, so I think if you have the money available, I would go for Gross. And Nick Nat saying, the problem with premium defenders is last season they were the ones who guaranteed the most points per pound. Now, it is worth mentioning that we're only 3 game weeks into the season. We will naturally look back at this season in game week 38, and we could have the exact same conclusion that the defenders were the value picks. I don't like to read too much into it in just 3 game weeks of data. I personally think that the premium defenders still offer fantastic value throughout the game. And when you think about it, if you've got a 6 million defender, a 6.9 million defender like Robertson, I can't really name many midfielders around that price point, apart from Martinelli, who I think would outscore Robertson between now and the end of the season. We have to remember that these defenders are still ridiculously underpriced. The likes of Perisic at 5.3, 5.4 million. Could you see a 5.5 million outscoring Perisic? I personally could not see it as a midfielder. Is it worth selling TA, waiting for his price to drop, then rebuying him for 0.1 million cheaper? No, I personally wouldn't do that strategy. I think it's a little bit too risky right now. Dan Man is saying, always great advice from Nacho. Smash it, smash a like. Or yes, thank you very much, Dan, for that. Massively appreciated. I'm sure you're having a great season as always. And again, guys, yeah, if you are enjoying the stream, make sure you do drop a like. It is always massively appreciated. We always try and get 50 likes, and I can see we are getting close to that. If you guys are in the chat, please do drop a like. Cora24 saying, should I buy Haaland over Kane this game week? I think if I was buying one right now, I think it all depends on what kind of manager you are. If you are worried about the potential rotation with the Champions League, which I think is an absolutely understandable reason not to buy Haaland, because I think there is going to be rotation and minutes managed for Haaland, you go for Harry Kane. As I mentioned, over the next 5 game weeks, Haaland is predicted to score 29.9 points. Kane is predicted to score 25.4 points. Now, of course, if we chuck in some maybe rotational minutes for Haaland, then I would expect his predicted points to come down. So it's all about what kind of manager you are. I personally would still go for Haaland, but that is at the premise that I think Haaland's still great for the next few. If I was worried about his minutes, then Kane would be the option for me. Ash, definitely drop a like. These streams are helpful, and over an hour long, it would be the decent thing to do. Appreciate that, Ash. Thank you very much. Tell the people what to do. No, joking. Sydney, double TEA and Robbo, any thoughts? Yes, I still like Trent and Robbo as a double up. But if you are looking to potentially... if you're potentially looking to invest your funds elsewhere, then going down for Robertson into a cheaper defender is a viable strategy, of course. Josh, yeah, appreciate that. Any news on the Zaha injury rumour? Unfortunately, no. I don't have any information on that. I don't want to be kind of saying any news that I don't really know about. So unfortunately, I'm not going to update on that one just so I don't really have the info. Nick, that's saying, I took Son out because he looks so off the pace this season so far. Yes, I think with Son, we have to understand that there are just some assets out there that are eventually going to come good and going to get hauls when you least anticipate it. Son is one of the best FPL options in the game. Right now, he just isn't delivering. Now, if I want to quickly look at the underlying stats for Son as we speak, and we can compare it to some of the other options available. Son right now, okay, he's played 3 games, 9 shots, 4 on target, 1 expected goal, and 0.24 expected assists. He's had 10 points, and his expected FPL points is 13.07. So, if I was to compare that to someone like Kevin De Bruyne, who's been fantastic so far this year, Kevin De Bruyne is predicted to have an expected FPL points of 21.2, which is basically about 9 points more than Son. So based on that, and because Kevin De Bruyne has so many fantastic fixtures coming up, I think I probably would make the Son to Kevin De Bruyne move and just know that there is inevitably going to be a time when Son does go good. That's just going to happen when you do float between different premium options. The same goes for if you were going to sell Haaland to Harry Kane. Nobody is debating that Haaland won't get hauls if you were to sell him. You're just kind of going for the player that is hot in that moment. And right now, unfortunately, Son just isn't delivering. In particular, with that expected goals, I would like to see that a little bit higher right now. So, yes, based on that, I probably would go for Kevin De Bruyne. Rio saying, thanks, Nacho. Will you do a deadline stream for Game Week 5? Really enjoy your stream. Yes, Rio, I will be doing a deadline stream for Game Week 5. Oh, actually, I tell a lie. I need to chat about that. I will update you guys on it, but I will be doing streams all through the week as usual, every Friday. If we can chuck maybe a deadline stream on the Game Week 5 deadline, that would be fantastic. I will talk to the guys behind the scenes, definitely. Eamon saying, if Arsenal upgrade their keeper next season, they won't be Virgin on the elite, but they won't. I'm not sure what that means. Apologies. Diaz or Rodrigo? I still fancy Diaz because I think his game time is absolutely secure. When Bamford does return from injury, Rodrigo could be a worry, but for now, he's still a fantastic option. It's all about the price points. If you don't want to spend 8 million on Diaz and you think the funds elsewhere for Rodrigo is going to help your team, then naturally Rodrigo is a fantastic option for your teams. Dubra saying, 2 free transfers, 1.5 million in the bank. Should I just start Almiron or upgrade him to a Leeds Brighton midfielder? Okay, so you have 2 free transfers, then I think naturally moving one of those free transfers for a player is worthwhile. Selling Almiron for his fixture away against Wolves, I don't think it's necessarily a desperate transfer for you. Now, with the price point of Almiron, I think I'll first ask you, do you have Martinelli in your team? If you don't, you absolutely go for Martinelli. Otherwise, I think Almiron to someone like Rodrigo would be a solid move for you to make if you can do it. You're just going to invest in a player that is currently tracking in terms of price changes. And I'll just quickly update you guys for any potential FPL price changes. I know that might help you because going into tonight, if you are looking to maybe make some transfers ahead of the deadline, it might be worth making that move tonight rather than tomorrow. So based on our price change predictor, we have got players to potentially rise in price. St. Maximin, Zinchenko, Mitrovic, Sanchez in goal, and Harrison isn't, but if he continues at the rate he is, he could be close. And price fallers as we speak, we have got quite a few. Ones of note, Bailey at Aston Villa could fall to 4.8 million. Cash at Aston Villa could look to fall in price. And I think that's it really. I think that's probably it in terms of price fallers. The rest are very much like Danny Ings, Jack Grealish, who we don't really have any investment in our teams. Samian saying, rate my team. Sanchez, Cancelo, Trent, Trippier, Gundogan, Martinelli, Salah, Rodrigo, Tony, Kane, Jesus. Yes, I really do like that team. I think you have a really nice balance there in terms of squad structure. The one thing I would say is Gundogan. I think this is worth talking on because we have got confirmation that Bernardo Silva is remaining at Man City. And I think that does hinder Gundogan because I don't foresee a situation where Bernardo Silva plays at the right side of that front three every single week. Therefore, once the likes of Mahrez or Grealish plays on that side, we are going to see plenty of times where Bernardo Silva and Gundogan's minutes are going to get shared. So based on that, I think Gundo is an excellent short-term move, but you need to anticipate there are going to be times where he gets rotated with Bernardo Silva depending on the opponent. Bernardo Silva is too good of a player to just kind of sit on the bench when Gundogan is playing week in, week out. And Happy Kilmore, what a great name that is, but it could be a little bit sinister. Advice, please, 2 from Rodrigo, Harrison, and Carl Walker. I would go for Carl Walker because I do fancy the Man City defence, and I would go for Rodrigo at the 2. So Rodrigo and Carl Walker, bench and Harrison. And then I say, loving the stream, by the way, Nacho, you're one of the best FPL dudes on YouTube. Really do appreciate that, buddy. Thank you very much. And as always, guys, if you can get us to 50 likes, that would be massively appreciated. If you are watching and you are enjoying it, then please do hit a like. And if you aren't subscribed, make sure you do so. Right, guys, so last up, we're going to be looking at the captaincy deliberation for game week 4 because I think it is one of the most interesting ones so far this season. So, guys, we have the current top picks going into game week 4. Now, it's worth mentioning we have a slight discrepancy on the predicted points of Gabriel Jesus, but it's only slight. There's really not much in it at all. So, based on predicted points, Mo Salah is predicted to score the most points in game week 4 in isolation with 8.6. Haaland on 6.6 and Gabriel Jesus on 5.6. And guys, while I'm doing this, make sure you let me know in the comments, who are you currently opting for right now? Or is it somebody outside of these three? Maybe a Harry Kane, maybe a Son as a bit of a differential. Now, looking at the ownership right now, Jesus is still absolutely dominant on 81% ownership, Salah on 59 and Haaland on 60. So basically, Salah and Haaland are very much the same. Now, if I was to put a bit of a guess right now, I do think that Salah is going to be the most owned captain going into game week 4. I just think the temptation with that home fixture against Bournemouth is going to make a lot of managers very, very keen to go in on him. And looking at it on paper, Bournemouth at home, Crystal Palace at home for City, and Arsenal at home for Fulham at home for Arsenal. You can see that the opponent expected goals conceded, Bournemouth actually have the best at 1.3, which is very interesting to see. And it's Fulham will actually have the worst on 1.51. So maybe there is an argument to go in on Gabriel Jesus because maybe Fulham are posing a bit more of an easier team to score against, whereas Bournemouth might be a bit tighter. But from an eye test perspective, what I did see, and by the way, guys, it's worth noting that is expected goals conceded per 90, not over the course of the 3 fixtures. So still not the best reading if you are a Bournemouth defensive owner. I view that as a fantastic opportunity for Mo Salah to get in and amongst the goals if the team that he is playing against has got expected goals conceded of 1.3 per 90. That is going to be goals all over it potentially for Mo Salah. And you can see that just the rest of it here. Expected FPL points per 90 and expected goals per team per 90. You can check them out on the screen there. But both Haaland and Man City are winning in both of those departments. So where am I sitting right now on the captaincy? I'm currently swinging for Mo Salah. I think he is the best captaincy option ahead of game week 4. Haaland, I think there's a few question marks about the minutes because he did have, of course, the quotes from Pep saying that he may get rotated when there are games in midweek. So if Man City are in a position where they're 2 or 3-0 up, Haaland may come off the pitch. I don't foresee that situation for Mo Salah. And equally, I had the same deliberation with Mo Salah versus Gabriel Jesus earlier on in the season. And what swung it for me is how big an additional point for a goal and an additional point for a clean sheet is in FPL. That is massive when we are looking at midfielders versus forwards. And we need to consider that with Mo Salah. He's on penalties, which is massive. But importantly, if he scores, it's an additional point. And for someone like Mo Salah, who is probably going to outscore most of the players in the game, that could be a huge difference between the point scoring of him versus someone like Gabriel Jesus. So based on that, based on the fixture, I think Mo Salah is the #1 captaincy going into game week 4. But let me know in the comments, guys, who are you currently going for as your captain ahead of game week 4? Ian, thoughts on double Chelsea defence this week, Cucurella, James? I don't mind it. I think Leicester are looking pretty poor. The only thing about Leicester is they're always good for a goal. And Chelsea don't look the best defensively right now without the likes of Kante and Kovacic. So I think Chelsea are still weak defensively, but I think there's a good chance for a clean sheet. And I wouldn't be selling my Chelsea defensive assets, that's for sure. George is saying Luis Diaz to Foden / Gundogan. No, I wouldn't. Diaz is in the top 5 predicted points for midfielders this week. I would hold on to Luis Diaz. And Josh is saying Rodrigo and Cucurella or James and Neto long term. I'd probably go for Rodrigo and Cucurella, but I think if Reece James gets confirmation that he's definitely going to be playing as a right wing back in the Chelsea team, then I think James and Neto become the better option. Dan, FPL draft, would you take Martinelli and Mount for Saka and Diaz? I actually prefer the Saka and Diaz option if you had the funds available. Sean Lee saying Isaac. Yes, Isaac could be a fantastic option, but the way I view it right now, with Newcastle's upcoming 4 fixtures are quite tricky. I see it as an opportunity for us to just kind of have a watch and brief on them, see how he gets introduced into the team. Of course, Callum Wilson is ruled out for the next 3 matches potentially. And then if Isaac finds his feet and hits the ground running, then we consider him as an FPL option. Again, guys, if you are enjoying the stream, please do hit that like. We're 9 likes away from 50, and that is always the goal in these live streams. That'd be massively appreciated. Gal saying, apologies. We have a question here. I'm thinking of bringing in Kulusevski instead of Rodrigo purely on fixture difficulty. Yeah, I like Kulusevski. I think he's a fantastic option. No doubts about that. Gal saying, Captain Jesus, Haaland or KDB or Diaz. I would probably rank those as Haaland number 1, KDB 2. No, actually, I'm going to have KDB as number 1 because I think his minutes are pretty secure. I'm going to go KDB number 1, Haaland 2, Jesus 3, Diaz 4. Sam Mile, I've got 2 transfers available, but I'm happy with my squad. Ramsdale, White, James, Cancelo, Trent, Perisic, De Silva, Salah, Diaz, James, Haaland, Neto, Murphy and Greenwood. Any suggestion on who to transfer out? I think naturally Neto is probably the temptation I would to have transfer out of your team. If you don't view him as a player that you're going to be playing week in, week out, I think you could either downgrade him to someone like Pereira at Fulham, have the funds invested there, but then you're going to have a situation where you're only going to have Salah and Diaz as kind of your main midfielders. Otherwise, what I would look to do in your team is potentially, I would say downgrade White as well, but I think he has a good fixture, but I think their minutes will get rotated with Tomiyasu. So Sam, of that right now, the only consideration I would have is maybe do Neto, maybe to a Leeds midfielder if you can get there. I think that'd be a solid move for your team. Choice of Jesus or De Bruyne for my squad. Haven't decided who to captain yet. I'll be very tempted by Kevin De Bruyne personally. I think if I had the choice between the two, I would go for him. Diaz or Reece James. I would, of the two that I'll play Diaz. Frazzle, Haaland or Kane for premium striker. This is the one. It's all about what kind of manager you are. If you're worried about rotation, I would go for Harry Kane. I think he's pretty fixture proof and rotational proof. Otherwise, I think Haaland is the more explosive asset. And based on our predicted points, he is predicted to score more than Kane over the next 5 game weeks. Martinelli, KDB, Rodrigo, Salah. I'm not interested in Pep Roulette. If you were on a wildcard, who would you bring in for Gundogan? Harrison, Gross, Kulusevski, Diaz. Well, I think if money's no object, I would absolutely bring in Diaz. Kulo a good hold this week? Yes, I would hold on to Kulusevski this week. I don't see him getting rotated. If anything, I would see Richarlison taking some minutes away from Son, if anything, quite surprisingly. Play De Silva or Cucurella this week? I would play Cucurella, absolutely. Walker or Eric Dyer? I would go for Walker, personally. Again, guys, 4 likes to 50 would be massively appreciated. And what I'm going to do, guys, because this kind of doesn't help, I'm going to drop it on the predicted points screen just so you can see it there. It might help you out in terms of some of your questions that you are asking. Again, this is just for game week 4 in isolation. Do 2 free transfers. What should I do? Okay, so you have Trent, Robertson, Cancelo, Perisic, James, Salah, Martinelli, Andreas, Bailey, Neto, Jesus, Haaland, goalkeeper, Ramsdale, and Ward. Okay, so you have a really solid team there. So I think it's all about what direction you want to go in. I really like your defence, and I probably would just hold on to Robertson personally. Otherwise, what you could do is you have a midfield of Martinelli. You have Salah, Martinelli, Andreas, Bailey, Neto. I'd potentially look to maybe downgrade Bailey and Neto and go Bailey down to a 4.5 million maybe, and then upgrade Neto into someone else, maybe a Harrison of Leeds, or if you can get to Rodrigo, maybe that in that direction. Lipok is saying Kane down to Tony and upgrade Gundogan to KDB. Look, if you can do that move, I think it is a fantastic move, but I think Kane as well is a brilliant option this week. I still think he's an excellent option. So it feels a little bit forced. I think Gundogan's in great form and he could easily start this game. So I wouldn't rush to make that move personally, in particular if it is for a points hit as well. Cameron saying, what are the good options for Neto replacement? So this is the problem that everybody has right now, is who to replace Neto with. So let me get up on my screen. You unfortunately won't be able to see this, but the predicted points for midfielders at, let's say, 6.5 million and below, because I know Neto is currently priced at 5.3. Okay, so look, it all depends on how much money you have in the bank. If you don't have Martinelli and you can do that to Martinelli, he is absolutely the route you need to go for. Next up, I think Harrison at 6 million is a better option for you. I think 6 million is a good investment. I'd probably go for Harrison over Aronson, although what I would say is Harrison is much more of a chance creator rather than a goal scorer. So again, if you can get to Rodrigo, he would be my option there. Ward-Prowse, I think, is a bit too pricey at 6.5 million. Otherwise, we're looking at some rogue options here. Do you go to Rashford at 6.3? That is very much a brave call there. Now, if you only have 5.3 million available to you, then the decision becomes very difficult for you. Surprisingly, based on our predicted points, Xhaka actually poses quite well on it, but I don't really think you want to be using an Arsenal spot in that position. Otherwise, really, guys, there's not much available to you. So what I would say to you is, otherwise, Neto down to someone like Andreas Pereira, if you don't own already, frees up funds elsewhere to upgrade your squad. That's probably the route I'd go for if you're not interested in the names that I told you about. Double Trent and Robertson, any thoughts? I would hold them this week. Unless you think that Robertson being sold could be used elsewhere in your team to upgrade, then I think that's a consideration. Thoughts on Zinchenko? Yes, if you have him, I would absolutely stick with him. If you're looking for Arsenal coverage, then I do think that he is a brilliant option. Based on our predicted points as well over the next 5 game weeks. Let me just get them up for you guys. Zinchenko is predicted to score 19.6. The only players 5.5 million or less who's predicted to score more is Kyle Walker and Gabriel. So Zinchenko is right up there with some of the best at that price range. And guys, thank you very much for 50 likes, always appreciated. And again, if you are new, make sure you do hit that subscribe button. Hopefully you are enjoying all the content that we're putting out this season so far. Dubra saying, can you kindly rate my team? Raya, Ward, Trent, Cancelo, Walker, James, Nico, Almiron, Salah, Martinelli, Mount, Andreas, Jesus, Haaland, Archer. 2 free transfers, 1.5 million in the bank. I'm determined to keep Mount. Okay, so if you're determined to keep Mount, then of course I'm not going to recommend anything as an alternative for Mount. The defense is so strong, I wouldn't be looking to upgrade Nico necessarily. Now, one move you could do is you could do Nico Williams up into Perisic. That is an option that you could consider, because then you're going to have another fantastic option who offers value. So that is one that you want to consider right now. Otherwise, with your midfield as we speak, I don't really know how you got that much money available, to be honest. That is quite a good squad for you to have that many funds available with Jesus, Haaland and Archer in your team. So, look, I think you could consider maybe upgrading Nico Williams to Perisic, but then you have a massive headache each and every game week who to start in your team, because I think that's going to be a very difficult one. Diaz or James for Wildcard. If I bring in Diaz, I won't have the cash for James. Then I'll consider maybe Cucurella. If you are wanting to have an 8 million midfielder like Diaz, I think Cucurella could maybe match James while he's operating as a right-sided centre-back. Ian, could I cope with Kane and Tony without Jesus? Nobody's essential in the game, but what you need to understand is with 80% ownership, any return that Gabriel Jesus has is going to be detrimental on your rank, because so many of the people in the game have him that if you are one of the few that don't, it could be very, very difficult for you to keep up if he does continue to smash it week in, week out. You're going to be very dependent on someone like Tony to match him or come very close to him. So I personally don't like going without Jesus, but if you're in a position where your rank isn't in the position you want to be and you need to take some drastic kind of alternative moves, then I think Kane and Tony is a nice alternative in terms of a strategy. I have now Harrison, Rodrigo, Martinelli, Salah midfield, going to hold it for 4 to 5 weeks. Yes, I don't see any reason to move away from that midfield. I think it looks good. The only thing I would say is if Bamford returns to the team, minutes could be a bit of a rotation for Rodrigo later down the line. Thoughts on Zinchenko, Rodrigo? I think both of those are good. I think I've covered them in a bit of detail. What about Odegaard or Bruno Guimaraes for midfielders to replace Neto? Now look, based on, again, the underlying stats of both of those players, if we just quickly take a look at those. Now Bruno Guimaraes so far this season in 3 games that he's played, and he's played pretty much all of the minutes. He's had 1 shot, 4 attempted assists, 0.03 XG and a 0.36 expected assists. Not a FPL consideration right now because he's playing a bit of a deeper role in this Newcastle team, a bit more of a creative role. So therefore, Bruno isn't an option that we need to be considering right now. Now, the other alternative that you did mention was Odegaard, and that Odegaard is definitely one that has kind of popped up as a potential consideration for our teams. Just need to get him up on my screen here. So 6 shots in total, a 0.76 expected goals, 0.06 expected assists. I think he is a good option for our teams, but at 6.5 million, I would much rather go for someone like Martinelli, who has got a bit better underlying stats and a little bit cheaper as well. 2 free transfers: Ramsdale, Trent, Cancelo, Reece James, Walker, Salah, Rodrigo, Gundogan, Martinelli, Kane, James, Walker, Archer. Yeah, I think that's a solid team. If I had to make a transfer in that, I probably wouldn't. Honestly, I think your team is fantastic. I wouldn't be looking to make any transfers there. And unfortunately, I think just burning a transfer might be the route you have to go for. One you could do is move Archer to someone like Greenwood at Leeds. That could be a sideways move, or the Fulham forward at 4.5 because there's potential anticipation of Archer leaving Aston Villa. FPL Diamond, is an 8 million midfielder absolutely necessary? No, I don't think it is. We've seen it so far this season that they've all been very, very inconsistent and unpredictable. I think that a lot of managers right now are opting for a midfield 3 of Salah, Martinelli and Rodrigo, and then having the front 3 of the likes of Haaland, Jesus and Tony. I think that's very much a viable move that we can absolutely consider going forward. I don't think an 8 million midfielder is desperate at all. Oh, it's Leapok. I do apologise there. Leapok. Thank you very much for that. Ash, Nacho once said, have a few different price points so you can switch in one transfer between those of form. I hope that makes sense. Yes, that's kind of a thought process that I have had, and I agree on that one. So an 8 million midfielder is helpful to have. I wonder how, so basically what Ash is saying there is the 8 million midfield forward, apologies, let me start again. The 8 million midfielder is a fantastic structure to have at the start of the season, because the sort of strategy that I was recommending was having a top tier premium, like someone like Mo Salah, and then an 8 million midfielder, which means that you can then move to other 8 million midfielders or go down into these players like Rodrigo, for example. So for those sat there right now on Diaz, you can easily go down to Rodrigo, whereas some managers who didn't have the 8 million midfielder, they might be scraping to get to someone like Rodrigo if they went a bit cheaper. Now that we've had a few game weeks of data, I still think it's too early to decide whether the 8 millions are good value or not. But I think we've got the option, being 8 million midfielder owners, whether to maybe go down to Rodrigo and then have the funds elsewhere to upgrade maybe our third forward into a Mitrovic, a Dominic Solanke, or even someone like a Callum Wilson when he's back from injury. FPL Dominant, is it possible to have Trent, an 8 million midfielder, and the front 3 of Haaland, Jesus and Tony? I do think it's possible, absolutely, but you are going to have to make sacrifices. So you will need a 4.5 million goalkeeper. You probably have Trent, one other premium, and then plenty of 4.5s. So based on that, I think the squad structure could be hindered a little bit. James or Arsenal defender? If you don't have an Arsenal defender, I would try and get coverage. The fixtures are still good for Arsenal. And Cameron saying, my team is Ramsdale, Ward, Alexander-Arnold, Robertson, Salah, Cancelo, Anderson, Pereira, Andres Pereira, Neto, James, Trippier, Martinelli, James. With that team, I probably would look to roll the free transfer. The only worry right now is that you are saying that you have a back 4 of, okay, you have Salah, you already have Martinelli, you have a solid back line, which I would probably play all of those defenders this week, most likely. I think you could roll your free transfer this week. Leapok saying, is KDB a must in the coming game weeks using a wildcard, or is Champions League football going to limit his game time? I think everybody is a little bit of a worry right now. I think KDB is a fantastic alternative to Mo Salah if you don't like him. Of course, it's very difficult to have a team structure of both Mo Salah and Kevin De Bruyne. So I think based on that, Kevin De Bruyne is always going to be that player that we wish we had, which always just can't really squeeze into our teams. But if you can get hit to him and you want to go for an alternative to Mo Salah, I think Kevin De Bruyne is a fantastic option. Based on our algorithm points over the next 5 game weeks, I can tell you now that... let me just try and get it up a minute. Let me just try and reset it. I do apologize, guys. Okay, for some reason I can't get it up, so I do not know why that is happening. De Bruyne over the next 5 game weeks is predicted to score 31.7 points, Mo Salah 33.4. So I think Kevin De Bruyne can absolutely match Salah over the coming game weeks. Sebalang saying, love your content. What do you think about Trossard in the coming games? I do like Trossard. I think he operates really well in that Brighton team. Guaranteed game time. I do think he is a fantastic option. And do you think Ivan Perisic will come on from the bench or get a run? Yes, I do think Perisic will get times where he will come off the bench. But I think because of his FPL potential and the value that he offers, if you are happy to have that risk, I think he is worth it because the rewards are going to be there for Perisic owners. So guys, that is going to wrap up today's Game Week 4 live stream. Thank you so much for everybody that is tuned into this live stream and for getting us over 50 likes. It is always massively appreciated. If we haven't answered any of your questions, make sure you do check out this week's videos, all of the videos that we've put out. We've covered captaincy, we've covered some of the biggest talking points going into Game Week 4. Check out some of the catalogue there. There are some excellent videos that are going to be providing you some value. And of course, rewind this live stream. I covered my team for Game Week 4, a wildcard team for Game Week 4, the predicted points, and of course, captaincy for Game Week 4. So as always, if you are new around here, make sure you do drop the subscribe button and hit a like on the live stream on your way out. And I will see you on the next live stream. But have a fantastic game week, guys. I hope your arrows are green, and we will talk very soon. Take care. Cheers.